Hey guys, so welcome to this sort of extra video that I decided to film. Basically in this video I'm gonna run through a bunch of brushes and tools that I used throughout the entire process. I'm gonna very briefly touch on like the very basic tools, but I mostly want to touch over something that's a bit more focused on sort of hard surface modeling. And I have to apologize, you'll probably hear my keyboard in the background, but I think it's best to kind of do it like real time than to record it and then try to do a voiceover on top of it as well. So you'll have to deal with that with my clicks. Alright, anyway, so let's get started with this. So first of all, I'm just going to be using a very simple object, just a cylinder. I'm going to make polymesh 2D. So let's get started. Yeah, so sort of bread and butter for sort of concepting stage is the move brush and snake hook brush combination. So obviously everyone knows how the move brush works. Just kind of, it's cool to sort of start developing shapes with it. When you get stretch polygons, you can always dynamesh the thing, and you can maybe smooth it out and sort of keep working with it. And snake hook is cool for even bigger changes. And if you use with combination with Sculptures Pro, so which is at the top here, you obviously get these sort of polygons that are being extended, or the triangles that are being created real time. So the modifiers I use with this are, first of all, backface mask, which is found in the brush menu, auto masking, and backface mask here. So okay, so this kind of gives you error if you have Sculptures Pro enabled, because they don't work together. But if I just disable Sculptures Pro, which is actually on my hotkey, you see I'm kind of starting to pull these sort of shapes in one direction. So it almost works as if I was, kind of precisely masking it out and then moving it up. But I can actually do it sort of without any masks. So it's super useful. So I can build like the shape from the side only, and maybe then I rotate it, and then I can build it from this direction as well. So I get this more like 3D volume. It's probably gonna be pretty dirty, but that doesn't matter at this stage, right? You're just gonna dynamesh it, and you can keep working. And even if it gets like this dirty, it doesn't matter, because the overall volume is there. Then you can just quickly, for example, smooth it out, and you have your new sort of volume. So it doesn't matter if it becomes kind of dirty mesh. And obviously you can use that just with move brush as well. So this backface mask works with both snake hook and move brush. But you see I get like a bit more almost dynamic curves happening. So they're not constant radius curves. They're maybe get wider here, and then they kind of taper back in here. So yeah, it could be a very useful tool, especially for a blockout stage. Right, another thing I'm using is Accu-Curve. So brush menu once again, curve, Accu-Curve. So once again, you can even use this in combination with backface mask or without. It's up to you how you want to use this. But basically, it's very cool for introducing sharper angles in whatever you're making, because sometimes you use move brush and snake hook brush, and you end up with kind of this like melted shape. You don't really have strong angles, so you could try to kind of clip them and have sharper angles. But you can just use this move brush with Accu-Curve enabled, and you can see it goes to a point rather than doing this, which is just kind of pushing that shape. So this is cool for kind of developing further the silhouette, and maybe you can end up with sort of more dynamic and interesting lines on the silhouette. Once in a while to put these sort of sharper angles in there. It could be a nice touch, and just might look a bit more aggressive, whatever you're working on. And then I think another thing that I use with move brush is, for example, the holding Alt button. So Alt button just kind of inherits the normal of the mesh and just kind of pushes it. based from the normal. So sometimes if you don't want to rotate camera but you know you want some extra volume here, you can just use Alt and it brings it up. Or here, if I want to like go from the sort of center, I can just hold Alt and you know it's gonna bring up like the center only. Alright, and another sort of move brush I want to touch upon is like the new Move Infinite Depth brush. So it is found here, and this is an amazing brush for block out, for even the cleaner stages, because you can actually introduce very clean angles like this, but it introduces them throughout the mesh. So maybe best example would be if for example I quickly clip this mesh and I use Infinite Depth brush, you will notice the effect that I get. So it builds those sort of very nice angles very quickly, and this is me using in combination with Accu-Curve. So you see I'm kind of building these bevels, and of course I can disable the Accu-Curve, which I have on hotkeys. Like most of these things I talk about in this video are probably used so frequently that I actually have all of that on hotkeys. So once I go over them, I'm not gonna say where they're located again. But yeah, here I'm also changing the profile of this shape, and you see I'm very quickly sort of developing this volume without really destroying it in terms of some sort of structure that it has. Then here, when you end up with a very sharp angle, maybe you can just kind of clip curve it, and you have like a nice bevel here. Alright, and even I'll talk a bit further with the mask brushes, but even here, like if I was to mask off, let's say this section of the mesh, so I have it masked, maybe sharpen it, and once again I can use Move Brush to kind of move it, and like it gives me a nice, interesting like effect here. Right, it gives like a nice, interesting effect. And also, what's awesome about these sort of artifacts that you get on the sides, like you see they're really thin planes, so if I was to Dynamesh them, they do Dynamesh, but just barely, I think. You know, they should most time give you some sort of holes. So what I like to do with these type of offcuts, or those thin sort of walls that I get, is use Move Brush with Backface Mask on, and you can push it to the side, and it actually gives you this sort of thicker wall in there, and then you can Dynamesh it. See, and it kind of sort of by, you sort of get this shape sort of by default, right? So yeah, I think it's a cool little thing here. Alright, let's move on a bit. So we're gonna touch upon the clip brushes here. Yeah, clip brushes, I think everyone knows more or less how they work. There's nothing really that special that I do with them. Obviously, you got your soft corners, great for cleanup, great for creating planes on the mesh, great for creating nicer corners on the mesh, and then, you know, when you have like your top plane and your edge, you can just, you know, do this, and then, well, obviously with a thinner mesh, and you can create the backside of the mesh. So you can pretty much define the final clean shape of the mesh very quickly with using clip brush. So your usual double alt click on corners, or yeah, to create like angular corners. So also cool. Yeah, you can once again use a combination with the mask. I use this all the time, so like if I want to mask out this area, and then I invert it by control clicking on the canvas, and I use clip curve here, I kind of bring it down, get this interesting shape. I can mask it, I can clip it again, sort of keep working on that shape. So really it's really cool how quickly you can generate those sort of inserts and just breakups of the volumes. And another thing I wanted to actually touch upon with clip brushes is something I use all the time, and that is if you use a clip brush. So for example, well, yeah, you wouldn't actually be defining the shape. You just use a clip brush. You release all the buttons on the keyboard and you press Ctrl Shift at the same time, and you get yourself a select rectangle. So you actually don't have to go into the brush menu and switch between them. You can actually just click as you have this selected. So it's very cool, like if I'm working on something, like, oh yeah, I have this clip brush enabled, I'm doing my clipping here and here, and then I really wanna, let's say, kind of focus on this area here, but I know if I'm gonna clip it, it's gonna mess up the whole shape. So all I do is this, get my clip in, and then unhide it, and then I have sort of clipped area only in there without touching the rest of the shape, which yeah, could be very useful. Alright, next sort of, clip brush I want to touch upon very quickly. Just, clip circle center is very awesome for kind of putting some sort of joint suggestions in areas that you think, the mesh could have some sort of, for example, a hinge joint. So it's very cool to very quickly put in the suggestion in there, and you actually get some nice mesh almost artifacts or byproducts where this kind of cuts in, this just kind of sticks out, especially on more organic shapes. So it actually could give you very, very nice results very quickly, just by saying, okay, maybe this part is gonna be some sort of just hinge joint in there. So I'm gonna quickly drop it in here, and maybe in here, and maybe I have like multiple hinge joints here. It doesn't matter, but it's awesome to quickly drop it in. And you can use this at blockout stage, you can use this at refinement stage, you can use this at cleanup stage. You can always use these clip brushes because they're, well, first of all, they're extremely clean if you have enough polygons. And then maybe I can dynamesh again here, and I can do them one more time, and now I get like extremely clean shape. It's almost like I appended a cylinder. So I can kind of just redo them. I mean, it takes a second, right, to redo them, so there you go. And you can also use a combination of these things, but this is just holding Alt essentially. And you also want to make sure you just have enough polygons in that area to be able to do this. Alright, so one last thing I wanted to sort of touch upon in terms of clip circle center brushes is you can mask them off, like some sort of areas in here, for example, and you just basically say I don't want to touch the rest of the mesh, and then invert your mask, and I can maybe add like a nice sort of volume in here, and I'm gonna have something like this in here, right? So yeah, it could be useful to kind of break off the overall design and add some circular parts in there. I think I accidentally made some sort of ostrich robot, but yeah, okay, I'll take that. Alright, let's move on a bit with the brushes. So Planar, I'm gonna quickly go over Planar. Super useful brush, very simple as well. So essentially I'm using at the moment with backface mask on, and I'm holding Alt, and all it does is it creates sort of a surface based on the radius of the brush and on the first normal that you touch on your mesh. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically, you have your normals surrounding this area, and if I touch here and I hold Alt, I'm gonna build a sort of planar shape here, and then maybe without holding Alt and without backface mask on, I can go over it again, and I create this sort of flat line, maybe throughout the whole mesh, and I get something like this. So it's cool to kind of quickly build very flat surfaces if that's what you're going for, and then maybe you can just use like H-polish and connect the surfaces together like this. And you see, and I kind of end up with this sort of shape in here. And then maybe go H-polish on top of it, Dynamesh, and yeah, you have this sort of effect happening here, which is very useful for hard surface design, of course. Okay, one of my favorite brushes we're gonna go over. It's the Mask Lasso. So let's see. I'm gonna Dynamesh a bit more at this point. So Mask Lasso I use all the time. It's probably, you know, my most used mask in Zbrush. And basically, what I like to do with Mask Lasso is create some sort of insert, maybe secondary forms on the mesh. But you can totally just, you know, create big forms. You can create even details with masks. So for example here, what I'm doing is, this is how Mask Lasso works, right? So you get this free form, but what's cool is that as you get this free form, you also get the straight line underneath it, and I actually use that straight line almost like a ruler. So for example, I want to like do something in this area, I want to insert it a bit. Well, I could just kind of draw it like this, and using that back line to sort of align with that top, and then sharpen it up, and I have something like this. And let's say I want to keep refining the shape, so maybe I want to make another cut like this, and now I'm using just Alt, alright, and I have this type of mask. And what's cool is the blurriness of the mask depends on your distance. So if I was doing it from this far and holding Alt to remove the mask, you see I have bigger blur radius here than here. So now I can kind of invert it and see what happens if I just kind of move brush with Alt and push it backwards. And you see I'm kind of getting this multiple blurriness sort of insert. So it could be cool for creating more complex shapes very quickly, and they're gonna look pretty clean. I think I need to increase my Dynamesh just a bit more to really show how clean this stuff can be. But you know, sometimes I only worry, for example, about one edge. Like I can do whatever I want here and whatever I want to do here, but just as long as the top lines, and then obviously I can just, you know, do this, and now I have this cleaner insert. And sometimes I will even like rotate the mesh and use Accu-Curve, and just kind of, you know, you can try to kind of play around with that stuff, kind of clip it backwards, creating some interesting mesh. Maybe push it in like this, and you get yourself some interesting meshes. And you sometimes I even use it with combination with Mask Curve. So for example, once again, I'm gonna do something like this and maybe break it off here, and then Mask Curve to, I'm just using Mask Curve and holding Alt. I'm kind of using that short edge to kind of create these slats, and then I can even blur it a bit, for example, to both angles, and then sharpen it up, and I get this sort of detail. And using Clip Curve, I can just rotate it from the bottom view and clip it backwards, and you get this sort of nice nice little detail in there. So it's super quick for creating these sort of nice interesting details. And another thing to keep in mind, I actually didn't use this that much in the tutorial because I was trying to go through it as kind of quickly as possible. But you can always use, for example, edge loop on your mask and press on edge loop masked border. So it actually creates this sort of loop here. And what you can do then is mask by features, which I need to figure out where it's found, but I think it's found somewhere in here. It might be found in the masking. Yeah, so it's down here, mask by features. You can press on that. You can invert it, blur it, and polish by features here. And you can see I'm getting sort of polish by features with an open circle, and you see I'm getting a really clean edge here. Now I can sort of unhide everything press only on these meshes, and using the gizmo I'll kind of just push it in holding control, and you see I get actually some clean areas here. Or I can just kind of use Clip Brush here again, and this time around it'll give me sort of cleaner border. So yeah, you can try to do that if you want to achieve like a bit cleaner result. And this is now its own polygroup, so what I can do is actually grow the polygroup by holding Control-Shift-X. See, I grew that polygroup. Control-Shift click on the green one, and Control-W on this one, so I actually have now two polygroups there. I can press on the sort of points where they're connecting, so I select them both. Control-Alt, and hide everything. Invert the mask, Control-Click. And now what I can do is actually use that Polygroup features one more time, multiple times, and you see I end up with really sort of clean edge in there. So there's definitely a way to sort of achieve clean meshes in ZBrush, for sure. Alright, so I think this pretty much covers it. I mean, obviously I didn't go over the most basic brushes, but just to quickly talk about them, you know, I use clay buildup brush a lot during the refinement stage, where I like break off the shapes maybe a bit more. So maybe in here, for example, if I feel like there's some sort of connection point, maybe I could, you know, break it here and then kind of go around this sort of circular shape. And this kind of suggests that this is how these two shapes are connecting together, you know, and now you have like better understanding how your thing is going to move later on. Here as well, I can maybe create some interesting cut here, or just kind of follow the shapes that you have. But yeah, that's pretty much clay buildup brush, and obviously you can, I use it a lot with like different radius sizes, so I quickly can separate meshes in interesting ways. Alright, what else? Standard brush. Standard brush is great for adding a bit more volume to shapes, and you'll notice here you get sometimes a bit of stepping with them, so you need to reduce lazy step to like 0.1, which is found in stroke and lazy mouse. So if you reduce the lazy step, you actually get cleaner shapes with this snake hook. Standard brush. Alright, and it's cool for even the clean stages of the mesh where you just want to add a bit more interest to sort of to an area. You can just kind of use it. This is me using it with lazy mouse, and then maybe, you know, use it backwards or something as well to sort of plant some sort of detail in there. Alright, so you can do that. So D standard, obviously everyone knows this brush. It's kind of cool for creating maybe some cut lines around volumes, or just making the volume seem sharper. So definitely can increase the Z intensity and sort of create cut lines. But sometimes it might give you a very sort of soft cut line, so you might want to actually download an orb brush pack. Okay, so I'm using orb cracks here, and you will see that actually if I increase the intensity on orb cracks, it gives a sharper line than D standard. But for this you can also use for example the chisel brushes that are found in ZBrush with sort of one of the profiles, and you will have the same effect actually. Create sort of cut lines. Alright, so I think the last couple of brushes, like Curve Tube, I used a lot in this project. So yeah, very simple. Obviously great for creating some sort of wires, using different radiuses to quickly generate wires. And then you can sort of rotate camera a bit so it's not all on the same sort of plane. So it's very like camera based. thing, and then you can kind of like just select them all with Control Shift click, invert it, mask it, and kind of move it into place. Another masking or selection method that I want to show you is if you do Control Shift with the select rectangle, and let's say I want to mask only these wires but not the top ones. So how can I do it quickly? Well, I can select like partially all of these polygons like this, then I can use Control Shift A, and it's only gonna grow the meshes that I already selected, and then I can just Control A to mask everything that's visible, and Control Shift click, and you see now I have these parts that are unmasked still. So yeah, really sort of cool process of how to quickly select shapes just by touching one, like for example one of their polygons. And the very last brushes, for example, are obviously Insert, Mesh, so it's good for sort of kick bashing something on your creation. And also just want to touch upon the history recall. So if you don't like some sort of change that you made, for example, I like everything that I made on this mesh, right? But I really don't like some sort of panel lines that are on the front there. So you could just kind of sort of remove them with smoothing, or just clay buildup and then smooth it. But here I'm just pressing on the timeline where I liked how it was before, just control clicking on that timeline spot, and then I'm going to use history recall brush, and I'm just going to quickly recall history on this particular area. So nothing changes except for this one area. Be careful with this brush because it really might give you a lot of artifacts. So I actually usually use it with backface mask so it doesn't touch the back face of these meshes. But yeah, it usually gives a pretty nice result. Alright guys, so that's it in terms of sort of brush overview. I thought it might be useful just kind of quickly create something like this for people that want to know more about the brushes. I still don't know if I'm gonna put this at the front or at the end of the tutorial, so yeah, I still don't know if I'm gonna put this at the front or at the end of the tutorial, but I think it really doesn't matter when you watch this, as long as it makes a bit clearer of the sort of brushes that we're gonna be using and the processes. So alright, thanks for watching.